everyone's favorite Republican Party frenemies are finally making amends. That's right, Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis have actually reached some kind of an agreement to work together. This is good for a few reasons. I'll explain why in a sec. In addition to that, I'm going to be talking about the new Title IX regulations, what exactly these mean, and how the states are reacting. And last but not least, I found out this last week that the government says that we can classify pizza as a vegetable. And their reasoning doesn't exactly make sense, but again, we'll get into that later. All of that today on the show. Welcome back to Free Speech. We've all probably had that one person in our lives at one point or another that we really want things to work out with. And it would actually probably be better for everyone involved if they did. However, for whatever reason, we keep getting into ongoing feuds with this person, and it just doesn't seem to stop. We've all probably had that at some point or another in our own lives. That's exactly what was going on with Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis until very, very recently, as in, this week. Both sides hurled insults and names at each other throughout the entirety of the primaries, until Ron DeSantis eventually dropped out and endorsed Donald Trump as the Republican candidate. It seemed like both sides had kind of agreed to just let it be at a standstill. We can exist with each other, we don't have to like each other, yada yada yada, the whole works. But that's not the end of the story. Because Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis actually reached a pretty cool agreement this week. According to the Daily Wire, Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis held a private meeting on Sunday to discuss working together in the upcoming election. The meeting was set up by a real estate broker named Steve Witkoff. He's a friend of Donald Trump and has a relationship with Ron DeSantis as well. Trump is looking for DeSantis' help in funding to keep up with Joe Biden's donations, and DeSantis is looking to get back to the point where he's viewed as a strong candidate for the 2028 presidential race. Politico also reported that the meeting was a pivotal turn and could help restore the relationship between the two before the primary season. Honestly, this is great for a few different reasons. First of all, Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, the two that the Republican Party actually likes the most, are finally making amends. This is great. These two are both political powerhouses. Think about it. Ron DeSantis has been on a roll with good policies for months. Donald Trump had a great term as president. These two working together is an absolute power move for us and a great thing for America in general. But there's something else that I got out of this that I honestly kind of like even more. Ron DeSantis is going to run again. I know there were probably more people like me who were very disappointed when he dropped out of the presidential race this year. But think about it like this now. We get 4 more years of Trump, he can undo some of the things that Joe Biden did and start our country back on the right track again. Then we can elect Ron DeSantis, who has the potential to have 8 years. So if we think about it like this, we have 4 more years of Trump until 2028. Then we get 4 years of DeSantis. Then potentially 4 more years of DeSantis. We are potentially looking at 12 years of solid presidency. This is a great thing for America because both of these guys know how to pass policy and they know what issues we actually need to address in our nation. We won't be sending billions of dollars to foreign war efforts anymore unless it's something that actually involves us. We won't be letting a 550% increase in illegal immigration happen almost every year like the current administration is doing. This is a good thing. Getting these two to work together and patch things up is an absolute power move, not just for politics, but for the nation as a whole. DeSantis' full backing of the Trump campaign is a major asset for Trump, apparently, because DeSantis' finance committee is full of fundraisers with massive networks that can donate money. Like I said, there are so many advantages to this agreement. Trump gets more campaign funding, Ron DeSantis gets to be more involved, and he gets to put himself in a position where he knows, or where the people will know, that he's trustworthy for the next election. As if they didn't know it already because of his policies, him backing out of the race and then endorsing the guy that was running against him is a power move for character as well. So, what can we take away from this? These two making amends is an advantage for all of the reasons that I listed. In addition to that, we now have the potential for 12 years of Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis being absolute solid presidents. That's definitely something to look forward to, and I seriously hope that it happens. But for the time being, this is pretty good. Now, though, unfortunately, we gotta talk about something that's not nearly as good as what I just talked about. That would be the new regulations under Title IX. Now, for those of you who don't know, Title IX is the common name for a federal civil rights law that essentially bans sex-based discrimination against students, employees, and others affiliated with schools and any other education program that receives federal funding. That's just kind of a basic overlay of what Title IX is. Previously, this was used as a way to protect women and girls in schools. But now, just like sports, it's getting twisted. According to USA Today in 2024, under Biden's new Title IX rules that will take effect August 1st, there will be protections from discrimination based on gender identity. What exactly does this mean for the current system? Well, what this means, if you actually look into the bill, boys are now going to be able to compete against girls if they say that they are transgender. No questions asked, because if you do, it's considered discrimination based on their gender identity. In addition to that, the word discrimination has been and will continue to be twisted quite frequently, and there's really no accountability here. And last but not least, quote-unquote women's rights continue to disappear. The left will talk to you all day about how women have the right to an abortion, but when it comes to a woman's right to have an actual protected space, they will absolutely demolish that right. And they'll go on telling you that you're the one who's not for supporting women. It's hypocritical, it's kind of ridiculous, but this is the system that we're in. They've changed these regulations, saying that you can't essentially be discriminatory of anyone based on their gender identity. But because of how much they've twisted the definition of that word, anything, and I do mean anything, can be seen as discrimination. If I'm in an argument with someone, or if I'm in a debate round with someone, let's say, and they say something against what I have to say, I could claim that as discrimination. And if I identified as a certain way, let's say I identified as a bag of popcorn, they would be discriminating against me, and I could say that it was based on my identity. There's no boundaries here because there's no accountability. There's no accountability because there's no real definitions anymore. The ones we have all been watered down. This is why words matter. But let's look a little bit more into this. What has the state's response to this been? Because this was I guess this is a federal guideline. It's a federal guideline that's being amended, but the states have some say in how they actually choose to enforce it. So what are the states actually doing? According to Axios Miami in 2024, Governor Ron DeSantis said that Florida's schools will not comply with the federal government's revisions to the Title IX guidelines. Rejecting these guidelines could threaten the millions of dollars Florida's schools receive annually. This bill updates the specific protections for LGBTQ students and prohibit discrimination based on gender identity and orientation, issues that DeSantis and Republican lawmakers have gone after in recent years. Lawmakers banned, it says transgender girls, but I'm just going to say it what it is. Lawmakers banned boys from playing on girls' sports teams and more recently rescinded a policy allowing transgender people to obtain a driver's license corresponding with their gender identity. That's honestly one of those things that, did we need a policy for it? Probably not. But the fact that we have one is kind of funny. But anyways, I digress. DeSantis essentially said that Florida would fight back. He said, quote, "We're not going to let Joe Biden try to inject men into women's activities and undermine the rights of parents," end quote. In a memo sent to district superintendents last week, Florida's Education Commissioner Manny Diaz Jr. said, "No educational institution should begin implementing any of these changes." Based. Once again, Florida leading the charge, going against the ridiculous mandates from the federal government. But it's not just Florida. Because where there is a leader, followers will come. According to the Daily Wire in 2024, at least 9 states have filed lawsuits against the Biden administration over the new Title IX rules, forcing public schools to allow trans-identifying males to compete in women's sports and use the women's bathrooms. Earlier this month, the article goes on to say the Education Department unveiled new Title IX regulations to prohibit schools from enforcing bans on trans-identifying males in girls' sports, set to take effect in August. As of Monday, Montana, Louisiana, Mississippi, Idaho, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina have all filed lawsuits over the administration's interpretation of this civil rights law. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton accused the administration of attempting to twist the federal law's meaning to align with radical gender ideology. Quote, Texas will not allow Joe Biden to rewrite Title IX at whim, destroying legal protections for women in furtherance of his radical obsession with gender ideology. This attempt to subvert federal law is plainly illegal, undemocratic, and divorced from reality. Texas will always oppose Biden's extremist, destructive policies that put women at risk. End quote. Ken Paxton is a great attorney general. I agree with his statement, and I think that it's awesome that states are actually starting to stand up against these kinds of regulations. I think that overall, even though this policy change is bad, the things that have been happening under this administration have been, in a way, somewhat hopeful. Now, don't get me wrong. I do not condone open borders. I do not condone changing these kinds of regulations. I don't condone most of what this administration has done. However, I applaud the states. The states are really starting to take some of their power back. I mean, think about it. When the administration tried to use federal force to keep the borders in Texas open, states banded together and started fighting back. When they changed Title IX, states have banded together and states have decided to fight back against this as well. I think that it's actually really cool. Now, once again, I don't really care for the policy changes. I don't really like the direction that most of them are going. But I like what the states are doing in response. State sovereignty is being brought back, and it's being brought back for very important issues. And that's something that we can stand up as a country and salute. So at this point, we all know that the government says that a man can be classified as a woman can be classified as a man, I can be classified as a bag of popcorn if I so choose. But there's one last thing that we want to talk about today that they've classified in kind of an interesting way. According to the Journal in 2024, pizza can be classified as a vegetable, at least according to a decision made by the U.S. Congress. American lawmakers have ruled that the amount of tomato paste in pizza sauce means that pizza can be counted as a vegetable. Here's the thing, though. Number one, there are multiple other qualifications to be a vegetable. But number two, tomatoes are classified as a fruit. If anything, wouldn't that make pizza a fruit? I mean, pay attention to your own classifications. This reason's kind of absurd, but it's really funny, so I decided I wanted to talk about it anyways. Now, school meals subsidized by the government are mandated to include a certain amount of vegetables, and the Department of Agriculture's plan would have pushed pizza makers at least partly out of the school lunch business. The salt industry, potato growers, and some politicians who said that the federal government shouldn't be involved in telling children what to eat also lobbied against this policy change. After some debate, Congress voted that anything containing 2 tablespoons of tomato sauce can be labeled as a vegetable, putting pizza into the vegetable category. Once again, tomatoes are a fruit. I know this, you probably know this, a 5-year-old down the street in your neighborhood probably knows this. But according to Congress, 2 tablespoons of tomato sauce makes something a vegetable. I will never understand the way that our government tries to decide these kinds of things, but honestly, what can we take away from this? The government's incentivizing obesity. Think about it. They tell you eat your vegetables, but then they tell you that pizza is one of your vegetables. You need any more proof than that? Okay, all jokes aside though, this is like what I said earlier. The impact of this, the impact of the Title IX regulations, the impact of both of those things is that words and definitions matter. We don't even have a definition of vegetable anymore, obviously. But what can we take away? This is why we need an informed population and an informed society. Because hopefully, none of us out there think that pizza is in fact a vegetable. Thank you for watching this episode of Free Speech with Lila Cortez. If you liked what you saw and heard, make sure that you like this video and hit that subscribe button. If you want to listen to the audio version of the podcast, head on over to Spotify. It's also just called Free Speech with Lila Cortez. Have a great day. Be blessed. See you soon.